Jerry, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Adam. This is Jerry.
Hey, good to hear you. You are
Yeah,
on. Awesome.
okay. So it does work.
Yeah, and so the kids will just pop on. I don't think
Okay, great.
So let me see. Can you, if
Yes, I can hear you. This is Eileen with me.
Hi.
hey, what can you see?
Just you.
Let me go back out. Who's with you, Jerry?
This is Eileen.
Yeah, I was just checking out the Zoom thing.
She's helping me.
So if I do this, Jerry,
She has to. I'm sorry?
if I do this, whoops, wait a minute.
Yeah, that looks okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Can you see the PowerPoint?
You got it. Yes.
All right, dude, we're good. Now we just wait for kids.
That's great. Thank.
You are high tech, Chair.
No, I'm not.
Look at this.
I can't live without Eileen over here.
Oh, it's exciting. Yeah,
Yes.
thanks again. I mean, sure.
anytime you want. Scott,
Yeah, hopefully next year, coronavirus will be. How's Scott doing? Is he hanging in there? It's crazy. He's in New York City,
yeah, he's
right?
in the middle. He's treating these patients. He's got 20 of these patients. He works in the ICU in Mount Sinai, New York.
Is it worse than people are portraying, or do you think that?
No, it's worse. He's got 20 on ventilators right now.
Like some of them will probably die? That bad?
He has 3 or 4 die a day.
Oh my God, Jerry! Jesus.
Yeah.
How's he holding up though, mental health wise? That's gonna be. I mean, I can't even imagine that.
Well, we're just praying he doesn't get the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, luckily though, he's young, so it seems
Yes.
not to affect. I mean, some young people are getting sick, but not as bad. But yeah,
Right, exactly. No, we're just hoping he doesn't get it.
what happened there?
So how do we advance the slide? I just say next slide.
Yeah, you could just tell me because is it advancing on your screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So let me ask you this: what if I go? Let me see if I can go full screen. How that looks from your end? Because what you're seeing now is what the kids will see.
Okay. And we've got to what time? 1:40?
Yeah, however long you can talk. The kids will have some questions. So they just watched The Poisoner's Handbook, which I don't know if you've seen it. It's a PBS movie that gets into the history of toxicology.
Oh, I read the book. I read it by Judith Cohen.
Yeah. Oh, so you read the book. Great. So then
Yeah.
they'll probably have questions about that because that's what they just did.
Check her new book out regarding the history of the FDA.
Is it good?
Yeah, it's really good. And then check out 18 Tiny Deaths, which just came out last month about forensic medicine and forensic toxicology in Baltimore.
Jerry, how's that full screen looking?
It looks fine.
Okay, perfect. Let's see. What I want to do. Okay, I guess I can't do that. What I want to do.
Okay. Do you have to see me?
No, I can't see your face, but that's okay. I mean, if you want to put it on, you can.
No, that's okay. I'm not.
Yeah, no, I know. I look in these videos. I'm like, God, because the kids like are so used to having their face on videos, they just do it second nature. I think you and I are old enough where video wasn't really a thing until we were older.
Gotcha. Yes, that's right.
So have you been more busy or less busy in the midst of the quarantine? Are people
Actually, less busy as far as patient care, more busy as far as forensic work.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. How's your wife doing?
She's good. She's home too. Northwestern's pretty much
Shut down.
yeah, pretty
Shut
much.
down.
I think
Yeah.
I mean they had 5 cases I think as of last week, so I think they don't want to risk it.
Oh, I get you.
Let's see here. Zoom.
Okay, just let me know when you want me to start.
Yeah, you got 7 minutes, so just do whatever you need to do.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'll be right back.
Yep. Hey, Layla.
Hi. So is there a meeting today and tomorrow?
Yeah, today and tomorrow, both optional. But today's meeting, it's not me talking. It's Dr. Jerry Leikin is talking.
Okay.
Tomorrow's meeting is more like just what's up, how you guys doing?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because Darius was asking me, and I was like, wait, there's 2 meetings? And he's like, yeah, which one are you doing?
Well, I don't know. I figured like 2 meetings a week seems like enough. I don't know. I don't know what your other teachers are doing. What are they doing?
Well, my first period teacher, which is my my AP class, he met with us individually. For a
Oh,
while.
like one-on-one.
Yeah.
Wow. Every day?
No, it was like every 2 days, I think.
Oh, that's great.
No, like 2 times a week, I think.
He meets with each kid individually.
Yeah.
It's impressive.
It was kind of weird though.
Oh, yeah, one-on-one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
Well, what did you do individually that you couldn't have done as like a small group with him?
he was checking in on how we were doing with our research projects because we have to do the junior research project. So
Oh, I
we talked
see.
about our ideas and everything. So that kind of had to be because everyone has different ideas for their project.
What about your other classes?
My math teacher does a Zoom every Tuesday and Thursday, and
Okay.
she just takes like an hour or so. If anybody has questions, they can pop in and ask her. And then my history class. They've had them, but they're like at 8 o'clock, and I'm not up at that time, so I always miss them.
Yeah, that's pretty early. That's early for me. Hey, Kat. Hey, Naila. I hope it's okay if I shout. Well, they're muted, but I can unmute them. I guess they can.
You can unmute them.
I can, but I don't know if they want to be muted. They may want to be muted, so I'll leave them muted. But
Wait,
how do I unmute, or how do you unmute?
no, I know how to unmute, but usually it's like the gallery view.
Yeah. So I'm in gallery view now. I can see them. I can see Naila and Kat.
Oh, you can't see me because my hair is
Yeah.
fine.
And then I think the guest speaker today isn't going to show his face. He said he's like at home and he doesn't want to, which I totally get. I'm like, I've been trying to get these virtual backgrounds. I can't do it. I don't know. My computer's not good enough.
All I see is like this big thing where it's just like education, chemistry, organic, inorganic, bio.
Yeah. No. Good. That's his PowerPoint he's going to go through. So has it been hard? Because I know you're a social person. Like, has it been hard to like do the social distancing thing?
Yes.
I can imagine, right?
Like it was really like the day after, and then my friends like, "You have to come over. I haven't been away from you from this long." I'm just like, I know.
Yeah. So his our guest speaker, his son is a nurse in New York State, and he said you can I'll have to, but he said it's worse than the news is like portraying, like what he's seeing in like the hospital. I think he said his son has 20 patients with coronavirus every day. 3 or 4 of them die, and then they bring in like new patients for him. Like he's just like, it's horrible. I was like, ugh. But like, I have a 78-year-old woman living with me, my wife's mom. So if she got sick, she'd probably die. So we can't even leave the house. It's kind of crazy. And I bet because your church, have they canceled church services, or what are they doing?
So we have online services.
Oh, okay.
Which is my program's gonna die. But yeah, we have online services, which is like we have an hour service. Like it's like a selected few of people can come into the church and help organize everything, and they like videotape it and then like post it online.
No, it's nice. Do they do like tithing online too, or like do you Venmo them your tithing?
Yeah.
Like PayPal?
Yeah, we always had an online thing, or like you can like text to pay. It's like different things that have adapted over the time. Not my phone. Oh.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I just dropped my phone into my cereal, but it was empty, so that's good.
Dr. Leikin, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hey. You okay if we wait? I said you have to about 1:40. You said, right?
Until about 1:45.
1:45. Okay. We're still a little short on kids, but we'll start in a minute or two. I was telling so Layla, one of my students. So there's actually 2 classes in the Zoom. One is my class, and then Mr. Young, who is a new teacher this year. You haven't met him. His classes are joining too. So it's 8 classes of forensics. So we'll see how many kids make it, because a lot of them have Zooms for their other classes, or they've got life, like just life. And this is optional, because I know New Trier, I think they're doing the same thing with like everything's optional. Have you heard?
Gotcha. No, I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't heard. Oh, I did hear you. By the way, my son he's not the nurse. He's the ICU doc.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So I was telling Layla, I don't know if you guys were here.
Yeah.
Dr. Leikin, who's our guest speaker today, his son Scott was my student when I used to teach at New Trier, and you want to tell him what he's seeing on the front lines of the battle, Dr. Leikin?
Sure. Yeah, he's an ICU doc. He's treating about 20 of the patients now. Most of them on the ventilator, and they're all very, very sick. Overall, and they're doing all sorts of investigational drugs.
Oh,
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy.
Yes.
All right, so Jerry, so do you want to? Are you ready?
Okay,
to
sure.
start?
I'm ready to start. So my name is Dr. Jerry Leikin. I'm the medical toxicologist in this area. I work with the Illinois Poison Center. Mr. Held was telling me that you all were just reading and finishing up a great book, The Poisoner's Handbook by Judith Cohen, which I had finished reading. I actually met her a few years ago. And that is an excellent book on, what forensic toxicology was like in the 1920s overall. I'm going to try to tell you what toxicology is like 100 years later, so to speak. So next slide. First of all, to be a next slide.
There it is. Oh.
Oh, here it is. Yeah. Basically, what medical toxicology is, you start out with chemistry, which you're doing now. Chemistry is broken up into inorganic and organic chemistry. You combine organic chemistry and biology, that's biochemistry. Biochemistry combined with physiology is pharmacology, which is the study of drugs. And study of drugs or pharmacology combined with pathology, which is disease, that's what toxicology is. So this is what I do, which is actually a form of chemistry. Chemistry at the bedside. Everything you're learning now from Mr. Held, I do apply, every day at work. And to be, next slide, please. As far as the training goes, it needs 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, 4 years of a specialized learning program like emergency medicine, preventive medicine, or pediatrics, and then 2 to 3 years of fellowship. Our fellowship or our training is based at Cook County Hospital. Next slide, please. So what a toxicologist does, or what you have to know, first of all, the most important thing is clinical expertise. You have to be able to see a patient and know what's going on. You have to know the kinetics, or how the drug moves through the body and how it works through the body. You have to know toxicity data. You have to know what has been the history of this. You have to know the environmental impact of chemicals and occupational medicine and hygiene. In other words, how much is in the air and everything. And you have to know what the laboratory aspects are. Next slide, please. So basically what we do is treat poisons. And that's what I do, is treat toxicity. We also have a poison center, which I'll explain. But the most important thing is that all poisons, to a certain extent, can be prevented. And that's what we try to do, is try to prevent poisonings. One of the most common poisonings in rural areas is pesticides. And so we try to limit the damage from that. And so all these other aspects are basically public health aspects that we look at. Next slide. So what I do is treat overdoses, adverse drug reactions, sometimes withdrawal, like alcohol withdrawal. Yesterday, I saw someone with heroin and fentanyl use who almost died, but he was able to walk out of the hospital, so drugs of abuse. Ergogenic drugs, that's to enhance athletic performance. There are some adverse effects with that. Ergolytic is things that inhibit or make athletic performance worse. Herbal agents, I see a lot of that aspect. Next slide, please. Indoor air pollution, such as sick building syndrome. Outdoor air pollution, industrial exposures. I just had today a possible cadmium exposure at a workplace in a car dealership or a car repair area. They can use some cadmium there for batteries and things like that. Pregnancy exposures, baby exposures. We do fitness for duty evaluations. That is, if you're fit for duty at work. We see a lot, about 7% of what I see are plant and mushroom poisonings. People will eat literally plants off the ground in this way. So these are things that I see. Next slide, please. Insect animal bites, hazmat episodes. Again, we do drug testing for fitness for duty, mostly urine. I see patients with problems of their brain or their liver or their skin. I determine what that is. Food poisoning, chemical disasters, and poison prevention. So those.
Next slide, Jerry.
Yeah, next slide. Next slide. Yes. So our first poison center was established in the basement of Rush Press St. Luke's in 1953. All the poison centers work together. That was established in 1959. And thus far, there is about roughly 2.5 million poison calls daily. I'm sorry, 2.5 million poison calls nationally, annually. And that translates in the state of Illinois to over 250 calls daily in the state of Illinois. So we get a lot of calls. And most of these calls are in children. Next slide, please. So this is a number one rule of toxicology, is that it's a dose that makes the poison. You take 1 aspirin, you're fine. You take 100, you're dead. And so this was articulated by the Italian or Austrian alchemist Paracelsus back then, that everything is a poison. There's nothing which is not. It's a dose that makes the poison. Next slide, please. So as far as what I do, as far as my medical management, I first make sure that the airway, breathing, and circulation is fine. Then we do a history and physical evaluation to look at what the type of poisoning it is. We call that toxidromes. I'll specify what that means in a minute. We do decontamination procedures. We used to do stomach pumping quite a bit. We don't do that very much anymore. Antidotes, we give in about 5% of cases. Dialysis, we do very rarely. That's enhancement of elimination of drugs that are already in the bloodstream. Most of what we do is known as supportive care. That is taking care of the patient and making sure that they can detoxify. The best detoxifying mechanism around is your own healthy liver and kidney. If the liver and kidney is healthy, then a lot of things will be much easier from my end as far as treatment goes. Next slide, please. So the term toxidrome means a group or pattern of signs and symptoms associated with a class of substances. For example, yesterday I told you we saw a heroin overdose. We can tell difference right away between a heroin overdose and a cocaine overdose or an amphetamine overdose. Because you can literally see it. The cocaine overdose, they won't be comatose, so they'll be very agitated. Whereas a heroin overdose, they would be in a coma. So these are some of the science groups that's associated with that class of poisonings. And next slide, please. So there's basically a few types. Poisonings are very interesting and relatively easy to recognize if they fall into these patterns. Let me go. I tell you what. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide shows these patterns. So here, if you just can look at the blood pressure and the heart rate and the pupils and the temperature and whether they have bowel sounds or whether they're sweating or not, you can break it down to whether they took an antihistamine, which is an anticholinergic agent, whether they took a pesticide, that's a cholinergic agent, whether they took heroin, which is an opioid agent, or fentanyl, cocaine or amphetamines, which we call sympathomimetic, which means it's too much adrenaline, or sedative hypnotic like sleeping pills. So basically, you can see if the heart rate is elevated, that could be that could be to some extent anticholinergic. Opioids make your heart rate very slow, make your breathing very slow, makes your temperature very low. Whereas with certain type like cocaine, makes your temperature very high. It makes your pupils very dilated, whereas opioids or heroin makes your pupils very, very small. So these are some of the signs and symptoms that we can tell. And this only takes a few seconds, literally, to do on a patient.
Jerry, we have a
Next
question.
slide.
Can I,
Yes.
do you want to do it like as they come in when the kids have questions?
Sure,
Or do you want me to wait to the end?
Sure. As it
So,
comes,
it's
great.
a two-part question. So when you're looking at this chart, these drugs have a defined effect on the body, right?
Right.
So what happens if someone takes two different drugs that have opposite effects? Like, I think it's called an 8-ball or a speedball, right? It's like, is it cocaine and heroin together?
Yeah, that's speedball.
It's a speedball. So what happens in that case?
Yeah, that was what John Belushi died of in 1982 or 3. Basically, what happens is you have to see it's a mixture of these, and one has to see what the dominant exposure is, which exposures is the person took more of, and those signs and symptoms would predominate. But basically, that's true. If they took 2 or more drugs, it could be a mixture of these slides. This chart.
The second part of the question, or the question, this is from Layla. What poison would you say is the hardest to detect for someone like you, a toxicologist?
What poison is hardest to detect? A lot of pesticides. A lot of pesticides are very difficult to detect. Poisons that are very, very potent, like fentanyl, can be hard to detect. So poisons that are very potent, or poisons that are used to kill other things like pesticides, those can be hard to detect.
So are the people that are getting sick from pesticides, are they working in their yard, spraying stuff on the ground, and it gets in their mouth? How are they usually ingesting pesticides?
Well, 2 ways. Sometimes it's infants or babies that may get into it. The other way is farmers, where they may be exposed to a lot of it. They may be administrating very potent pesticides and not diluting it properly or something along those lines, and they could be exposed quite a bit in their occupation. Also exterminators, if they're not using it right.
Thanks.
Okay, so next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is just a list of drugs that can cause meiosis, which is small pupils. Meiosis is a term we use for very small pupils, and mydriasis for very large pupils. So sometimes just looking at the pupils can tell you what they took. Next slide, please. So the patient, like yesterday, came in comatose. So what we do for all these patients that are comatose, that means that they're unconscious, is we give them oxygen, we give them sugar to make sure their blood sugar is not too low, we give them thiamine, which helps them metabolize the sugar, and then the drug called naloxone, which reverses heroin overall, which happened yesterday. It reversed it very nicely. So this is what we do for almost every patient that comes in unconscious. Next slide, please. Then we do, if the person took something orally, a bunch of pills, for example, we'll do what's called gastrointestinal decontamination. We no longer use Ipecac, which makes you throw up, because if you're unconscious and throw up, you might, what we call aspirate, in other words, throwing up into the lungs, which can really damage the lungs. What we do, and we no longer really do stomach pumping, which we call gastric lavage very much anymore, because it doesn't work very well. The most you can reduce, most you can eliminate is maybe 10, 20%. We give activated charcoal, which basically binds the substance and you poop it out. So it prevents absorption by binding it in the stomach or the small intestine, and you poop it out overall. It works very well. You can remove about 30% of the substance that way. Another way is by giving laxatives, very potent and powerful laxatives called whole bowel irrigation. That can remove about 60% of the substance. So these are some of the things. No, activated charcoal is not similar to barbecue charcoal. This is a barbecue. This is activated charcoal is activated by, it's heated, and it has surface area that's very large. So you cannot eat barbecue charcoal or anything along those lines because it won't work very well, because the surface area is not very large, and therefore it doesn't bind it very efficiently. This is a special type of charcoal that's made to bind the drug very, very quickly overall. let's see. Are there other questions or?
Yeah. So can you see the chat? So Kayla asked.
I can barely see it.
Okay, I'll read it out for everybody. But Kayla asked for chronic poisonings that happen over years. So we're not talking about an acute poisoning, but something long term. Are there timelines for symptoms to show up, or do they start to appear all at once?
Most of the time, they appear all at once. For most of them, it depends. Some substances like asbestos can cause cancer, and that can wait 30 years. But most everything that doesn't cause cancer or something along those lines, that would occur within a few days.
And then there was an old myth that if you take a piece of toast and burn it, you could feed that to a poisoned person, and that would act as activated charcoal. Is that the case?
Well, that was actually in the Boy Scouts manual. That is charcoal. It's not activated charcoal, but it is charcoal, and it might remove a tiny amount of substances. This removes much more. The principle is the same, though. The principle is virtually the same.
So if you were stuck at home and you couldn't get to the hospital right away, burnt toast is your best bet at home, or a laxative?
Well, probably call the poison center, and they would let you know.
Okay, we will hopefully not have to call.
Right. 1-800-222-1222.
1-800-222-1212.
1222.
Oh, crap. Don't call that number. Call this number. 1-800-222-1222.
222-1222.
1222. Okay, there we go. Put that in your phones, guys.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the antidotes, which are used only about 5% of the time. We talked about naloxone. I'll go into some of the other ones in general briefly. But again, antidotes are used actually very rarely. The definition of an antidote is any drug that increases the lethal dose of another drug overall. So if you give a drug that for the lethal dose is much higher, that's an antidote. Next slide, please. So one example that we use all the time is what's called N-acetylcysteine for Tylenol. As you can see from this slide, Tylenol, on the right and left, you see the glucuronide and sulfate. That's how it's normally metabolized. It's normally metabolized to non-poisonous substance. But when you take too much Tylenol, like about 150 milligrams per kilogram, you go down the pathway that's in the middle called cytochrome P452E1, and it produces the substance called NAPQI, which causes liver failure. What happens is that you add N-acetylcysteine, which is here glutathione. It's a form of glutathione. It takes the NAPQI, metabolizes out to mercapturic acid, and then you eliminate it through the kidney. So this is how we adjust the metabolism of Tylenol or acetaminophen to detoxify it. Overall, works very, very well. If we give it within 8 hours, it's almost 100% effective.
Somebody's
slide,
asking, why
Yes.
are antidotes so infrequently used?
Because antidotes are very, 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 very specific. This antidote is really good only for Tylenol. There may be a few other things. And there are thousands of chemicals out there and thousands of exposures. And so that's one of the reasons in this sense.
Is there anything that doesn't have an antidote? We saw in the Poisoner's Handbook the heavy metal thallium. You've been poisoned, and I
Yes.
assume cadmium maybe is similar. There's not much you can do with thallium. Are there any other things like that?
Yes, there are a lot of chemicals. A lot of pesticides don't have antidotes. A lot of herbicides, plant poisons, don't have antidotes. A lot of metals. Thallium is a tough one to treat in this sense. And so other agents such as cobalt or cadmium don't have really good antidotes. So industrial chemicals don't have very good antidotes, such as formaldehyde. overall. So there are quite a few things that don't have antidotes. However, next slide, please. You'll see for toxic alcohols, which is mentioned, methanol is mentioned all over in the Poisoner's Handbook. She
Yep.
has a chapter on methanol overall from Prohibition. Remember that chapter on Prohibition, how if you don't decant the top 10% of the bathtub gin, you actually drank methanol, which causes blindness overall. Well, famiprazole blocks that first enzyme called
Unless you're that
alcohol
one guy,
dehydrogenase.
there's the one guy in the book that keeps drinking it and doesn't get sick.
Right.
They
right.
try to kill him, and yeah,
The bartender, I think it was a bartender.
He keeps drinking and he's fine.
Right. I remember that one. Overall, my understanding also is that he drank alcohol too with the methanol.
Yeah.
They gave him the alcohol. Well, the alcohol actually is an antidote. So we use famiprazole, which is similar to alcohol. What it does, it blocks the first enzyme. You see that alcohol dehydrogenase. If you block the enzyme, you don't develop the toxic byproducts, formaldehyde or formic acid. So that was happening in that guy they tried to kill.
So it's not the methanol that's poisonous. It's what your body turns the methanol into that's poisonous, right?
Precisely, just like with Tylenol. It's not the Tylenol that's poisonous, it's in metabolic byproducts.
So we have a question here, Jerry, about this. I think this antidote or other antidotes, like something like famizopol. How did I say it right? Famizopol?
Famiprazole.
Famiprazole. Yeah. How long would it take something like this to take effect? If somebody had drank too much alcohol or they needed the antidote, do they happen immediately, the effects of the antidote?
We have to give the antidote within 3 to 6 hours. The antidote works pretty fast, within an hour or two. But you have to give it before the formaldehyde and formic acid are formed.
I see. And that's 3 to 6 hours?
Roughly.
Roughly. Okay.
Okay, next slide, please. So this is antifreeze. Same principle as with methanol. You block the first enzyme with famiprazole, and it blocks all these other things that can kill the kidney. Basically, these things kill the kidney and cause kidney failure overall. So it's the same principle.
And a lot of pets, you were saying, I think last year, they'll drink the antifreeze off the ground in the garage if it like comes out of a car or something, right? Right.
This is the second leading cause of poisoning due to in pets is antifreeze. First cause is pesticides. This is the second leading cause. When they were opening up the Disney parks with the animals, they had a bunch of animals that died from all the Jeeps that the Disney parks were using and were putting out the antifreeze.
All right, so 2 questions here, Jerry. Is famizopol an alternative to stomach pumping, or would you do them together? How does that work?
We would probably do them together, though we're not stomach pumping very much anymore. But we probably try to decontaminate in some way and then give this, and then give the antidote. So we don't look as an alternative; we look as an adjunct.
Why no more stomach pumping?
So it doesn't work very well. Basically, it can only remove maybe 10, 20% of the substance, and plus you may aspirate it. It may cause some stuff to go in the lungs.
Naila has a question, Jerry. What do you do in a situation where you as a toxicologist can't identify the type of poisoning someone has?
Well, then we try to identify the class of poisoning. If we can't do that, it's supportive care. It's the last thing, supportive care, which I'll go into in just a second.
And then one more question just popped up here. It's from Adele. Has there ever been a time where an antidote caused more harm to someone than the poison itself? Or is that something that could happen?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, the antidote can sometimes cause. We used to give an old antidote for cyanide poisoning. and it was sodium thiosulfate and sodium nitrite. Well, the sodium nitrite causes a blood problem, which can actually make the blood carry less oxygen. And several kids have died from that when we were treating for cyanide poisoning. So yes, that can happen.
Oh, these are great questions. Keep them coming,
Yes.
guys. You want me to go next slide, Jerry?
Yeah, next slide. So in fact, I'm talking about cyanide antidote here. The new cyanide antidote is called is basically called hydroxycobalamin, and it basically detoxifies cyanide to vitamin B12. You see there. The old cyanide antidote detoxified to thiocyanate. We don't use it much anymore. So cyanide poisoning we now treat with hydroxycobalamin, which it's the next slide. Oh wait, I'll get into that in a second. So
Good
enhancement
question.
yes. Is there a question?
Oh, did you see that question? Is that what you're talking about?
I didn't see it. I didn't see the question.
So Claire is asking, in the case where, say, you as a toxicologist give the antidote and it causes more harm to the patient, how does that situation play out legally? Whose fault is it, et cetera? Are you liable or not as a toxicologist?
In theory, yes. In the way it plays out, it's not. In theory, yes, we are liable. The way it plays out, not usually, because most people die of cyanide poisoning anyway.
I see. So if it's something like cyanide, they're probably
yeah,
gonna die. So anything you try, they don't hold
right.
against you. Okay.
Pretty much. Enhancement. Oh, go ahead.
One more question from a student is, I think they're asking, does everyone have the same side effects when you give the antidote? Like, do all patients like that come in with cyanide poisoning or methanol poisoning or pesticide, do they all have the same reaction to the antidote, or does that vary from patient to patient?
It varies from patient to patient. It depends how much they weigh, if they're allergic to it. So it does vary, but it follows a similar pattern.
Okay. All right.
So as far as oh, okay.
Is this the slide
as far
you
as
went, enhancement slide?
Yeah. Yes. Enhancement elimination. We give sometimes multiple doses of activated charcoal, but we don't do that much anymore. We may make the urine very basic, pH over 8, and that will eliminate more aspirin and barbiturates, phenobarbital. And then dialysis is sometimes used for the toxic alcohols, for methanol and ethylene glycol. So those are 3 methods for enhancement elimination. Next slide. So most common overdoses are over-the-counter analgesics, Tylenol, aspirin, ibuprofen, cleaning agents, cosmetics, sedatives. So these are the most common overdoses called into Poison Center. Yes, what was the question?
Can you overdose on an antidote to one of these? Like maybe. Yeah.
Absolutely. You can overdose on anything.
You told us a story last year about some woman who overdosed on water or something?
Yes, in Oregon. They had a contest as far as how much water you can drink and hold it in without going to the bathroom. And what happens is water causes very low sodium, and the person died of low sodium, water intoxication.
Wow, that's crazy. She had too much water.
Yeah, but she won the contest.
Well, did she though?
Well, won the battle, lost the war, I guess.
Something like that.
Yeah. So next slide. Most common causes of poisoning deaths is heroin or opiates, carbon monoxide, heart medicines, and antidepressants. But it's very rare now that people die of poisonings. Only 0.05% of people die of poisonings, which means 99.95% live. And this is from the Poison Center.
So you're saying of everyone that comes in with a poisoning case, only 0.05% of those people die?
That are called into poison centers.
I see. Gotcha. That's
Next
pretty
slide.
good, man. It's good results.
Yeah. Right. If we're able to get them right away, we have some pretty good results. Next slide. So regarding opioid overdoses, which is how they look like this, basically. Next slide. So some statistics on the opioid overdoses is that we're in the opioid epidemic. Now, I'm not going to go over these. These are just, you can go through all the numbers, but it just says that we're seeing a lot higher deaths due to narcotics. Overall, Chicago alone, 700 deaths due to opioid overdose in 2016, and it's even increasing over that. I think we're up close to 900 now.
And where does the heroin, the opioids, people are making these? People are making it in their home. They're buying it. Is it coming across like? How is it getting here?
It's distributed across the border. Some of it is felt. The fentanyl is felt. It comes from China.
So it's being shipped like on a shipping container or something.
Right, and distributed through Mexico. Next slide, please. I just have this slide just shows the Chicago's numbers overall. So this is some other statistics. Cook County account for almost 50% of all and the rate of heroin overdose is 3 times in Chicago that of the United States overall. So we're seeing quite a bit.
So Jerry, question just came in.
Yeah. Sure.
Why? I mean, and I don't know if you can speak to this, but why don't people manufacture opioids within the country like we do with, like people in America do with crystal meth? You know?
Yeah, it's much more difficult to because unlike crystal meth, you have to grow the opium. Opium is growing. Remember, it's from the poppy plant, and so these poppy plants grow in Afghanistan and Asia for the most part in this way. And so that's the raw material for the opioids, for heroin, and for a lot of these other substances, the natural substance, morphine and codeine. Next slide. So this just shows you how drug overdose deaths are increasing quite a bit overall, more so than car crashes, AIDS, guns, that sort of thing. Next slide, please. Okay, so the way that things happen as far as drug epidemics go, it starts out plant. I mentioned about poppy plants, then becomes pharmaceuticals in the sense, and then becomes synthetic. So like poppy plant is a plant, morphine is a pharmaceutical, fentanyl is synthetic. And as you go down this pathway, becomes more and more potent overall. And when it becomes more and more potent, that's when lethality increases. So this is a key point, is that as synthetic narcotics are much more potent than the morphine or the plant-based poppy seed, so to speak, in this way. It's something like 1,000 times more potent than heroin. Fentanyl is about 1,000 times more potent than heroin, than heroin or morphine. Next slide, please. And I'm happy to, let's see, where are we at? Oh, here. So happy to answer any other questions.
So question I have, and I'm gonna unmute all you guys now. If you wanna ask your question to Dr. Leikin personally. So a question I have for you, Jerry, and I think I've asked you this before. In the Poisoner's Handbook, right, they talk about all these poisons. I think I know the answer, but as a medical toxicologist, if there was someone that you had to get rid of for some reason and you wanted to leave no trace, do you know, don't say it, but do you know what substance you would use to get rid of a person? Say an enemy or something.
I won't say it, but the answer is yes.
There's something in your mind that no one would be able to trace, etc. Okay. But don't say it.
You know something? A few years ago, an author of a murder mystery called me about that same question, and I gave him the answer, and he incorporated it. It's in a book someplace. Let me just put it that way.
Is your name in that book or not?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Google.
in fact, they made a movie out of it. And I told them I wanted Brad Pitt or George Clooney to play me, but they didn't get one of them.
I see more Clooney. I know what you look like, so.
Okay.
No, because they can't see
Well, I
your
don't look
face.
like either.
These kids can't see your face.
Yeah, I don't look like either.
All right. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions from the students? Here, I'm going to unmute everybody so you can hear their voices. All right. Unmute. Everybody's unmuted, I think.
Hold on.
There. You're all. Wait. Unmute. I don't know why it's. Okay. Everybody's unmuted. Oh, in the book, Jerry, was the crime solved? Did they figure out what poison it was?
Yes, they did.
But if it's untraceable, how could they figure it out?
They had a smart toxicologist.
And that was
did
you,
that.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know though. That seems suspicious to me. That's like the firefighter who starts his own fires and then puts them out to look like a hero. The toxicologist knows the answer.
Right. Yeah, it is suspicious, but hey, we got to make us look good.
So question from Vince. Why do you think opioid deaths have been increasing through the years? Is it more abuse? Is it stronger heroin? Is it a combination of things? What do you think?
It's a very important combination of things, but it's more potency. People become more tolerant of opiates over time, and so they become more potent. So that's what we're seeing now, is that we're seeing more fentanyl, for example, which is much more potent, and that's really what's killing people. It's not the heroin; it's the fentanyl. So that's why I think it's more important, or it's people are dying from it.
All right. Well, Dr. Leikin, thank you for your time. Thanks for spending time with us today. I know you got to get going. So, guys, thanks for joining us. Go ahead, Jerry. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. It's a pleasure, and please feel free to contact me anytime.
Hopefully, in a personal way, not in an emergency way.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Leikin.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Young and I?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody's good?
Have a test on this?
Oh, wait. What was your question? Is there a test?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
It's optional. Like the whole, and as far as I know, until next week. Wait, sorry, I don't want to maybe
Next
Mr. Young
Tuesday.
knows this. I know it's
Tuesday
like everything,
starts-
these first 2 weeks is optional. You don't have to do any of this. We would love for you to join us, and I'm glad you guys did. I think next week it might start counting. I'm not sure.
Are we doing toxicology the whole time?
No,
Yeah.
actually, the next unit we're starting is code breaking. So cryptography. So looking at like spy codes, talking about the Enigma machine the Germans used, the Navajo code talkers in World War II, things like that, and looking at actual written codes. And we're going to show you guys how to break them, and we'll give you guys some puzzles to work on. I think is that right, Mr. Young? I think that's what we talked about.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. But I think we're going to be doing until like the spring break. I think we're going to be doing toxicology here.
Yeah, because next week we have a couple things lined up with toxicology, and then after that code breaking, and then we'll see if we're back in school or what. And we're still working on the autopsy, trying to get that online. So, but everybody's good. Are you getting a lot more rest now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that a good thing?
Yes.
All right. Tomorrow we have an optional. If you just want to stop in and say hey and talk about the movie, that'll be tomorrow at what, 1 o'clock? I think, right, Mr. Young?
I might have a different time than you. I can't remember what time I made it, to tell you the truth.
Okay. Yeah, I think ours is at 1 o'clock for Mr. Health. So tell your friends. Tell them remotely, though. Don't tell them in person that we'll be meeting at 1 o'clock. That's it. You guys want to stay and chat, or do you want to go do something else?
Oh no, wait, hold on. No, mine's 3 p.m. tomorrow. My meeting time.
Yours is at 3. Okay, yeah. Ours is at 1.
Wait, are we just discussing the movie tomorrow?
Movie.
we're
We'll
gonna-
talk about anything you want, toxicology wise. Talk about life, whatever you want. But I think
Yeah,
the focus is going to be the movie.
Yeah, this is like a forensic style check-in. So, like it'll be nice to see everybody and talk about something, right? Like, come on, see new faces, not people that live in your house.
That is true.
All right. Is everybody cool if I go eat lunch?
Yeah, go for it, Mr. Hill.
All right. It's pho. So my wife made pho, so I smell it. And we'll see you guys tomorrow, or I'll see you guys tomorrow. So if I end this, I think it ends for everybody, right? If I hit the button?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
You end
okay.
it for everybody.
I'm going to end it for everybody. I have so much power. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.